Evelyn Harris, 62, shivers in first class as the plane touches down in Seattle, her frail hands gripping a flimsy blanket, her face shadowed with quiet defeat after a flight attendant's icy rejection stings deep. Whispers ripple through the cabin. Something's off, but no one knows why. A fierce young woman, Camille, watches from the rear, her glare cutting through the dim light. A simple ask has unleashed a storm Evelyn never expected, one that could break her or remake her entirely. What's about to unravel? Before we dive in, tell us where you're watching from today. And if you stand for justice against all odds, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more stories of grit and triumph. Evelyn Harris stepped onto the red-eye flight from Atlanta to Seattle, her joints aching from a long day and the creeping chill of early fall. At 62, she carried herself with the quiet poise of a woman who'd spent 30 years as a nurse, tending to others while swallowing her own exhaustion. Her wool coat, a faded chestnut brown, was buttoned tight against her chest, and her gray hair sat in a tidy bun, strands slipping loose from the wind outside. She clutched a worn canvas tote in one hand, her knuckles stiff with arthritis, and a small rolling suitcase in the other, its wheels squeaking faintly as she shuffled down the jet bridge. The air inside the plane hit her like a cold slap, sharper than the Georgia night she'd left behind, and she shivered as she found her seat, 2B, in first class. It was a rare treat, a gift from her daughter for a medical conference she'd been invited to speak at, a nod to her decades of service. She eased into the wide leather chair, the cushion sinking under her slight frame, and tucked her tote beneath the seat ahead, her fingers curling tighter around the strap as the cabin's chill seeped into her bones. She glanced at her boarding pass one last time, then folded her hands in her lap, trying to settle into the unfamiliar luxury. The hum of boarding passengers filled the space, a mix of rustling bags and muffled chatter, but Evelyn kept her eyes low, tracing the stitching on her coat. She wasn't used to this, the plush seats, the extra legroom, the soft glow of overhead lights. Her life had been cramped buses and hospital corridors, not first-class cabins. She pulled the thin blanket from the seat pocket, a flimsy square of gray fabric, and draped it over her knees. It barely reached her shins, and the cold air brushed against her ankles like a persistent whisper. She hesitated, her thumb hovering over the service button, then pressed it. A soft ding echoed, and she waited, her gaze fixed on her lap, her breath shallow. Vanessa Pierce, the lead flight attendant, stood near the galley, her sharp blue eyes scanning the cabin like a hawk sizing up its prey. 38, with a crisp navy uniform hugging her frame and polished black shoes gleaming under the lights, she exuded control. Her blonde hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, not a strand out of place, but her face carried a shadow of impatience, a hardness that didn't match the practiced smile she flashed at the right passengers. She'd been with the airline for 12 years, climbing the ranks with a reputation for running a tight ship, her clipboard always in hand, her rules ironclad. Her gaze swept over the rows, pausing when it landed on Evelyn. Older, black, alone, sitting in first class. Vanessa's lips twitched, a flicker of something unreadable crossing her features, judgment settling in like a fog. She tilted her head, slightly, as if Evelyn's presence didn't quite compute, but she didn't move yet. Just watched, her fingers tapping against her thigh. Evelyn shifted under the blanket, the cold gnawing at her legs. Vanessa approached, her heels clicking, softly on the carpeted aisle, that tight smile plastered on her face. "Yes?" she said, her voice clipped, polite but edged with frost. Evelyn looked up, her brown eyes warm but tired, and offered a small nod. "Sorry to bother you. It's a little cold in here. Could I have an extra blanket, please?" Her tone was soft, measured, the kind of politeness honed from years of navigating tense rooms. Vanessa stared at her, half a beat too long, her eyes narrowing just enough to notice. "One's enough," she snapped, her words cutting through the air like a blade. "We don't hand out extras like candy." She turned on her heel before Evelyn could respond, her ponytail swinging as she strode back down the aisle, leaving a wake of silence behind her. Evelyn blinked, her hands still folded neatly in her lap, the sting of Vanessa's tone sinking into her chest. She didn't sigh, didn't frown, just sat there, her face a mask of calm, while her fingers tightened around the blanket's edge. Around her, passengers shifted. A white woman in 2C adjusted her scarf, smirking faintly as she caught her husband's eye across the aisle. A businessman in a pinstripe suit 2 rows back glanced up from his laptop, his lips curling into a subtle sneer before he returned to his screen. The rejection hung in the air, public and pointed, and Evelyn felt it like a spotlight she couldn't escape. She pulled the blanket higher, though it did little to warm her, and turned her head toward the window, the dark glass reflecting her weathered features back at her. She'd faced worse, she told herself. Far worse. But the casual cruelty still cut, a familiar ache she'd never quite outrun. Down in coach, row 28, Camille Jackson sat hunched over her phone, her sharp eyes hidden beneath the hood of a gray sweatshirt. At 35, she was a force, the CEO of Horizon Airways, though no one on this flight would have guessed it. She'd booked the seat last minute, blending in to test her airline service firsthand, a habit she'd kept since taking the helm 5 years ago. Dressed in black slacks and a faded hoodie, her hair tied back in a low knot, she looked like any other tired traveler. Her tablet balanced on her knee, her thumb scrolling through emails. But her attention wasn't on work anymore. It was on her mother, Evelyn, up in first class in the scene she'd just witnessed. She'd seen Vanessa's glare, heard the snap in her voice, watched her mother shrink under it. Her jaw tightened, her pulse quickening as she typed a message to her executive team. Check the manifest. First-class passenger, Evelyn Harris. I want Vanessa Pierce's file now. She hit send, her lips pressing into a thin line, her mind racing. Back in first class, Vanessa swept past Evelyn's row again, her clipboard tucked under her arm. She stopped at 3A, where a white couple in their 50s sat sipping complimentary wine. Need anything else? She asked, her voice suddenly syrupy, warm as honey. The man grinned, holding up his glass. Another round'd be great. Vanessa nodded, her smile widening. Coming right up, she turned, her eyes sliding over Evelyn without a flicker of acknowledgement, and grabbed a stack of blankets from the galley. She handed one to the man, then another to his wife, tucking them in with a flourish. Can't have you two getting chilly, she said loud enough for Evelyn to hear, her smirk flashing as she strutted back to her post. The couple chuckled, settling in, oblivious to the slight they'd just helped amplify. Evelyn's hands stilled on her lap, her nails digging into her palms. She didn't look at Vanessa, didn't give her the satisfaction, but the message was clear. It wasn't about blankets. It was about who Vanessa thought deserved them. Evelyn's skin, her age, her quiet demeanor, they'd marked her as less, in Vanessa's eyes, an intruder in a space she didn't belong. She'd seen that look before, in hospital waiting rooms, on buses, in stores. A lifetime of glances that said she was out of place. She closed her eyes, willing herself to let it go, to focus on the conference ahead, the speech she'd prepared about equity and healthcare. But the cold lingered, inside and out, and the weight of Vanessa's dismissal pressed harder than the thin fabric across her knees. Camille's phone buzzed, a file popping up on her screen. Vanessa Pierce, 12 years of service, spotless record, known for efficiency. Efficiency, Camille thought, her lips curling. She'd seen enough. Her mother had raised her alone, working double shifts to put her through college, enduring slights like this without complaint. Camille had built Horizon from a failing regional carrier into a national powerhouse, vowing no one would treat her mom like that again, not under her watch. She leaned back, her mind spinning with next steps, her fingers hovering over her phone. Vanessa had no idea who she'd just crossed, no clue that the woman she'd dismissed was tied to the one person who could end her career in a heartbeat. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane taxied toward the runway, engines rumbling beneath the floor. But the real turbulence was brewing in row 28, where Camille's quiet fury was about to take flight. Camille Jackson sat crammed in row 28, her knees brushing the seat back in front of her, the coach section's stale air thick with the scent of recycled coffee and cheap perfume. At 35, she was a titan in disguise, her gray hoodie and black slacks masking the CEO of Horizon Airways, a woman who'd turned a sinking airline into a juggernaut. Her sharp brown eyes, framed by a few loose curls escaping her low knot, stayed locked on her phone, fingers moving with the precision of a surgeon. She'd seen it all unfold up in first class. Her mother Evelyn's quiet request met with Vanessa Pierce's venomous snap, the way that flight attendant's gaze lingered on Evelyn's dark skin like it was a crime to sit in 2B. Camille's chest tightened, a familiar ache from childhood days watching her mom swallow slights at grocery counters and bus stops. Not this time. Her thumb danced over the screen, firing off a text to her executive team. Check the manifest. First-class passenger, Evelyn Harris. I want Vanessa Pierce's file now. She hit send, her breath sharp, her mind already 3 steps ahead. Up in first class, Evelyn leaned back in her seat, the leather creaking faintly under her weight. The thin blanket barely covered her knees, and the cabin's chill clawed at her joints, her arthritis flaring with every shiver. She closed her eyes, trying to block out the sting of Vanessa's words, the way they'd slice through her like a scalpel. She'd spent decades in emergency rooms, stitching wounds and calming chaos, always keeping her cool. This shouldn't rattle her, she told herself. It was just a blanket, just a rude woman, but the weight of it pressed harder, the public sting of being dismissed in front of strangers, their smirks and sideways glances burning into her. She pulled the blanket tighter, her fingers stiff, and willed herself to sleep, to let it go. The plane was airborne now, cruising at 35,000 feet. The engines a low hum beneath her, but rest wouldn't come. Vanessa Pierce strutted back down the aisle, her clipboard tucked under her arm, her polished shoes glinting under the dimmed lights. She'd brushed off Evelyn's request like swatting a fly, but the older woman's quiet dignity gnawed at her, a splinter she couldn't ignore. She stopped at 3A, where a white couple in their 50s lounged, their wine glasses catching the overhead glow. The man, balding with a ruddy face, waved her over. "Hey, it's getting nippy up here," he said, his voice loud, performative. Vanessa's smile flipped on like a switch, all teeth and warmth. "Oh, we can't have that," she cooed, grabbing 2 thick blankets from the galley stack. She draped one over his lap, then another over his wife's, tucking the edges with exaggerated care. "There you go, all set." Her voice carried, sharp and deliberate, slicing through the cabin straight to Evelyn's ears. The couple chuckled, the wife murmuring, "So sweet," as Vanessa shot a quick, smug glance toward 2B. Evelyn's eyes snapped open, her hands clenching the flimsy fabric on her lap. The favoritism wasn't subtle, it was a slap, a neon sign, flashing who mattered and who didn't. Her heart thudded, not with anger but with that old, heavy exhaustion, the kind that came from years of being sized up and found wanting. She didn't turn her head, didn't give Vanessa the reaction she clearly craved, but the air around her thickened, the slight morphing into something uglier, something personal. Across the aisle, a businessman in a dark gray suit, Tom, looked up from his phone, his thin lips twisting into a smirk. "Some people don't belong up here," he muttered, loud enough for Evelyn to hear, his voice dripping with disdain. A woman in 2C stifled a laugh, adjusting her scarf like she was in on the joke. Evelyn's nails dug into her palms, her face still a mask, but inside, the wound deepened. Back in coach, Camille's phone buzzed, a file loading on her screen. Vanessa Pierce, 12 years, no write-ups, praised for maintaining order. Order, Camille thought, her lips curling into a sneer. She'd watched Vanessa play her game, doling out kindness like a reward only certain passengers deserved. Her mother didn't fit the mold, not with her modest coat, her graying hair, her black skin in a first-class seat. Camille's blood boiled, a slow simmer turning to a roar. She'd built Horizon from nothing, poured her life into it, all to make sure her mom never had to feel small again. Evelyn had worked double shifts at Grady Memorial, stitching up gunshot wounds while racists spat at her in the halls, never complaining, always rising above. This wasn't just a blanket, it was a line in the sand, and Vanessa had crossed it. Camille leaned back, her hoodie slipping off one shoulder, her mind racing. She could fire Vanessa now. One call to HR, and she'd be gone before the plane landed. But that wasn't enough. She wanted Vanessa to feel it, to see the weight of her own arrogance crash down. She tapped her tablet, pulling up the flight's live feed, her eyes narrowing as she watched Vanessa preen in first class. oblivious to the storm brewing 20 rows back. What kind of woman looked at a 62-year-old, asking for warmth and saw a threat? How deep did that coldness run? Camille's fingers hovered over her phone, her next move forming. She wasn't just a passenger, she was the one who signed Vanessa's checks, and that flight attendant had no idea the fire she'd just lit. Evelyn shifted in her seat, the blanket slipping as she tried to cover her legs. The couple in 3A laughed. Again, their voices grating, Vanessa's syrupy tone echoing in her ears. She'd faced worse, she reminded herself. Far worse. Like the doctor who'd called her girl at 40, or the patient who'd refused her care because of her skin. She'd always kept her head high, her voice steady. But this felt different, sharper. A public stripping of her worth in a place she'd dared to feel safe. She glanced out the window, the night sky a void of black, and wondered if she should have stayed in coach if first class was a mistake. The thought stung, but she pushed it down, her hands folding tighter, her resolve hardening. Camille's eyes flicked back to her screen, her thumb scrolling through Vanessa's file. Efficiency. Control. A spotless record hiding a rotten core. She'd seen her mom take hits like this her whole life, silent battles fought with grace, while Camille watched, helpless. Not anymore. She typed another message, her words clipped. Monitor first class. I'm handling this. She hit send, her jaw set, her pulse pounding. Vanessa thought she'd won, thought her little power play was the end of it. But Camille was just getting started, and the cabin's quiet hum masked a reckoning that would shake the sky. What would Vanessa do when the mask slipped? How far would she push before she broke? Hey folks, let's talk about this. Did Vanessa's smirk make your blood boil too? Comment number 1 if you think Evelyn deserved that blanket and a whole lot more respect. What about Tom's snide remark? Does it hit home for anyone? Drop a number 1 if you've ever seen someone judge for where they sit, not who they are. If you're rooting for Evelyn to rise above this mess, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and join us for the fight. We're diving deeper, and trust me, you won't see what's coming. So, what happens when Camille's fury meets Vanessa's arrogance? Stick around to find out. The plane sliced through the night sky, a steady hum vibrating beneath the floor as clouds streaked past the windows at 35,000 feet. Camille Jackson sat in row 28, her hoodie pulled low, her sharp eyes glued to her tablet, as the message she'd sent minutes ago pinged back with a response. Her executive team had moved fast. Vanessa Pierce, lead flight attendant, 12 years, no infractions. First class manifest confirms Evelyn Harris in 2B. Camille's lips pressed into a thin line, her thumb hovering over the screen. She tapped out a reply, her words terse. Escalate to the captain. Now. She hit send, her pulse a steady drumbeat, her mind locked on her mother up in first class, shivering under Vanessa's cold glare. She'd built Horizon Airways to protect people like Evelyn, not to let them be torn down by petty tyrants in crisp uniforms. This wasn't just personal, it was a test of everything she'd fought for. Up front, Evelyn Harris sat rigid in 2B, the thin blanket a useless shield against the cabin's chill. Her arthritis pulsed in her knuckles, a dull ache she couldn't shake, and the memory of Vanessa's snap, "We don't hand out extras like candy," looped in her head. She'd kept her composure, years of nursing steeling her against worse, but the sting lingered, sharp and public. The couple in 3A murmured over their wine, their blankets piled high, while Tom, the businessman across the aisle, tapped his phone with a smirk still plastered on his face. Evelyn's hands stayed folded, her breathing shallow, her eyes fixed on the seat back ahead. She wouldn't give Vanessa the satisfaction of a reaction, wouldn't let her see the crack in her armor. But the cold seeped deeper, and the weight of being singled out pressed harder with every passing minute. Vanessa Pierce moved through the cabin with the confidence of a queen, her clipboard a scepter, her smile reserved for the right passengers. She'd brushed off Evelyn like dust, her sharp blue eyes catching the older woman's stillness and mistaking it for weakness. She stopped at the galley, pouring another glass of Pinot for the man in 3A, her voice lilting as she handed it over. "Anything else I can do for you?" she asked, all warmth and charm. The man grinned, tipping his glass. "You're a gem." Vanessa beamed, her ponytail swinging as she turned, her gaze sliding past Evelyn without a flicker. She'd won, she thought, put that woman in her place, kept the order she prided herself on. First class was her domain, and she decided who belonged. In the cockpit, Captain Hank Grayson adjusted his headset, his grizzled face etched with lines, from 30 years in the sky. 58, with a salt and pepper beard and a no-nonsense stare. He'd flown everything from cargo haulers to jumbo jets, and he didn't flinch at turbulence, mechanical or human. The co-pilot, a lanky kid named Derek, tapped the console, his voice low. "Ground just patched through. Camille Jackson's on board, row 28, and she's got a problem with Vanessa in first class." Hank's brow furrowed, his fingers pausing on the controls. "Jackson? The CEO?" Derek nodded, his eyes wide. "Yeah, that Jackson. Says it's about a passenger in 2B. Hank exhaled, sharp and heavy, and opened the private channel. "Get Vanessa up here, now." Vanessa's radio crackled as she adjusted a tray table in 4C, her smile still fixed for the white couple there. "Lead attendant to the cockpit," the voice buzzed. She frowned, smoothing her uniform, and handed off the tray with a quick, "Be right back." Her heels clicked down the aisle, her mind spinning. Probably some VIP whining about peanuts, she thought, rolling her eyes inwardly. She passed Evelyn again, her gaze flicking over the older woman's still form, a twinge of irritation flaring. That one wouldn't dare complain, she figured. Too meek, too out of place. She reached the cockpit, knocked once, and stepped inside, her posture straight, her clipboard at her side. "You needed me, sir." Hank didn't stand, didn't smile, just turned in his seat, his gray eyes locking onto hers. "You've got a problem," he said, his voice gravelly, calm, but edged. "Camille Jackson's on this flight, and she's pissed about 2B. Vanessa blinked, her smile faltering. "Who's she? Some VIP whining about blankets?" Her tone was light, dismissive, but Hank's face hardened, his jaw tightening. "She owns us," he said, each word a hammer strike. "Horizon Airways, CEO, and 2B's her mom." Vanessa's breath caught, her throat tightening, but she forced a laugh, thin and brittle. "Her mom? That woman overreacted, sir. I told her we only give one blanket, that's policy." Hank leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "You sure that's all it was?" Vanessa's mind raced, her palms prickling with sweat, but she doubled down, her voice steadying. "She made a fuss over nothing. I handled it." Hank's eyes narrowed, reading her like a flight chart. "Handled it," he repeated, slow and heavy. "Well, Camille doesn't think so. She's watching. You, Pierce, and she's not happy." Vanessa swallowed, her confidence wobbling, but she straightened, clutching her clipboard tighter. "I didn't know who she was. How could I?" Hank didn't blink. "Doesn't matter. You picked the wrong fight." He turned back to the controls, dismissing her with a flick of his head. "Get back out there, and watch your step." Vanessa stepped out, her heels clicking slower now, her chest rising and falling too fast. The cockpit door clicked shut behind her, and the cabin stretched out long and heavy, the hum of the engines louder in her ears. She'd misjudged, badly, but she wouldn't crumble, not yet. She'd dealt with complaints before, smoothed them, over with a smile and a policy quote. This was just another hiccup, she told herself, nothing she couldn't fix. But the name Camille Jackson echoed, a weight she couldn't shake, and the thought of Evelyn being more than some random passenger gnawed at her pride. Back in first class, Evelyn sat still, her hands folded, her eyes on the window where the night swallowed the horizon. The couple in 3A laughed again, Vanessa's blankets keeping them cozy, but the calm was shattered when a white man in 4B stood, stretching, and bumped his coffee cup. The dark liquid splashed across Evelyn's lap, soaking her coat, the heat stinging her thighs. "Watch where you're sitting," he snarled, his voice thick with irritation, his pale face twisting as he wiped his hand on his pants. Evelyn flinched, grabbing a napkin from her tray, but Vanessa swooped in, her eyes flashing not at the man, but at Evelyn. You should have moved faster, she snapped, snatching the napkin from Evelyn's hand and tossing it aside. Now I've got a mess to clean. Evelyn's breath hitched, her hands trembling as she dabbed at her coat with her sleeve, the coffee seeping deeper. The man shrugged, muttering, "Clumsy," and sat back down, while Vanessa stormed off, leaving Evelyn exposed, the wet stain a public mark of shame. Tom smirked again, louder this time, his phone clicking as he snapped a discreet photo, the caption already forming in his mind. The cabin felt smaller, the air thicker, and Evelyn's mask of calm cracked just a little, her fingers curling into fists. She'd endured slights, but this, the spill, the blame, the dismissal, it piled on like bricks, each one heavier than the last. In row 28, Camille's tablet pinged, the live feed from first class streaming in grainy detail. She saw the coffee hit, heard Vanessa's barb, watched her mother's quiet struggle. Her fists clenched, nails biting into her palms, her fury a live wire sparking in her chest. What kind of woman turned a spill into a weapon? How far would Vanessa go to prove her point? Camille's eyes burned, her breath sharp. She'd built this airline for her mom, for people like her, and now it was a battleground. She typed one last message. "Tell Hank to brace himself. This is just the start." She hit send, her resolve steel, her heart pounding. Vanessa had no idea the storm she'd unleashed, but Camille did, and she was ready to burn it all down to make it right. The plane cruised steady at 35,000 feet. The cabin lights dimmed to a soft amber glow, but the air in first class crackled with unspoken friction. Evelyn Harris sat in 2B, her wool coat still damp from the coffee spill, the bitter scent clinging to her skin. Her arthritis throbbed, a relentless pulse in her knuckles, and the thin blanket on her lap offered no warmth against the chill seeping through her bones. Vanessa Pierce's words, "You should have moved faster," echoed in her skull. A fresh wound layered over the earlier sting of, "We don't hand out extras like candy." She'd swallowed it all. Decades of nursing teaching her to keep her head high, her voice low. But the weight was too much now, the public shaming too sharp. Her hands trembled, not from cold but from a spark of defiance she hadn't felt in years. She couldn't let this one slide. Evelyn's eyes flicked to the service button, its small white glow a quiet challenge. She'd asked once, been dismissed, humiliated, but something snapped inside her, a thread of patience fraying after 62 years of bending. She pressed the button, the soft ding cutting through the cabin's hum like a gunshot. Heads turned, the couple in 3A pausing mid-sip, Tom the businessman glancing up from his phone with a raised brow. Evelyn sat straighter, her chin lifting, her brown eyes steady despite the flutter in her chest. She wasn't just asking for a blanket anymore, she was demanding to be seen. Vanessa appeared at the end of the aisle, her heels clicking fast, her sharp blue eyes narrowing as she zeroed in on 2B. Her clipboard was gone, her hands free, her smile replaced by a tight-lipped scowl. "Yes?" Vanessa said, her voice low, icy, a warning wrapped in a single syllable. Evelyn met her gaze, her tone calm but firm, honed from years of facing down panicked patients and arrogant doctors. "I'd like that blanket now, please." The words hung there, simple, direct, a line drawn in the sand. Vanessa's jaw twitched, her fingers curling at her sides. "Don't push me, lady," she hissed, stepping closer, her shadow falling over Evelyn's seat. Before Evelyn could blink, Vanessa lunged, snatching the thin blanket from her lap with a vicious yank. The fabric ripped slightly at the edge, and she tossed it to the floor, a crumpled heap by Evelyn's feet. "You don't need it," Vanessa spat, her voice loud enough to carry, her eyes blazing with something darker than irritation. The cabin erupted in gasps, a sharp intake of breath from every corner. The woman in 2C dropped her scarf, her mouth agape, while the man in 3A choked on his wine, coughing into his fist. Tom laughed, a harsh bark that sliced through the shock. "Serves her right," he said, his smirk widening as he leaned back, arms crossed. Evelyn's heart slammed against her ribs, her hands empty, her lap exposed, the cold rushing in like a flood. She didn't flinch, didn't cry out, but her fingers dug into the armrests, her nails scraping the leather. Vanessa towered over her, chest heaving, daring her to respond, to give her an excuse. Evelyn held her ground, her silence a wall, but inside, the humiliation burned, a fire she couldn't douse. In row 28, Camille Jackson shot to her feet, her hoodie slipping off her shoulders, her tablet clattering to the seat. She'd watched it all on the live feed, the yank, the toss, the venom in Vanessa's glare. Her mother's face, steady but strained, flashed on the screen, and Camille's vision tunneled, her fury a living thing clawing at her chest. She shoved past the passenger next to her, a sleepy college kid who mumbled a protest, and stormed up the aisle, her black slacks swishing with every determined step. She reached first class in seconds, her presence a thunderclap in the stunned silence. "That's my mother," she said, her voice cutting through the air like a blade, loud and unyielding. "You're done." Vanessa froze, her head snapping toward Camille, her eyes widening as the words sank in. "What?" she stammered, her bravado cracking, her hands dropping to her sides. Camille stepped closer, her 5'7" frame radiating power, her brown eyes locked on Vanessa's paling face. "Evelyn Harris is my mother," she repeated, slower, each syllable a hammer strike. "And I'm Camille Jackson, CEO of Horizon Airways. You just assaulted a passenger on my plane." The cabin tilted, passengers leaning forward, whispers rippling like wildfire. The man in 3A set his glass down, his wife clutching his arm, while Tom's smirk vanished, his phone slipping to his lap. Camille pulled out her phone, her thumb flying over the screen as she dialed her ground team, her voice steady despite the storm in her chest. "This is Jackson. I want an emergency landing in Denver. Get security ready. Vanessa Pierce is off this flight." She hung up, her gaze never leaving Vanessa, who stood rooted, her breath shallow, her mind scrambling. "You can't do that," Vanessa said, her voice thin, desperate. "I'm crew. I have rights." Camille's lips curled, a cold smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Not on my airline, you don't." She turned to the passengers, her tone shifting, commanding. "Anyone else have a problem with my mother getting a blanket?" Silence answered, thick and heavy, eyes darting away. The captain's voice crackled over the intercom, calm but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're diverting to Denver due to an onboard issue. Please remain seated." The plane banked slightly, a gentle tilt that belied the chaos unfolding below. Evelyn looked up at Camille, her daughter's fierce silhouette framed against the cabin lights, and a flicker of relief washed over her. She'd fought back, and Camille had her corner, a shield she hadn't expected. The passengers erupted, some cheering, a ragged "yeah" from a woman in 4C, others jeering, Tom muttering, "ridiculous," under his breath. The couple in 3A shrank into their seats, their wine forgotten, their blankets a guilty pile. Vanessa's face flushed red, then white, her hands trembling as she backed away, her heels catching on the carpet. "This is insane," she hissed, her eyes darting to Evelyn, then Camille, then the passengers watching her fall. She'd lost control, her domain slipping through her fingers, and the realization hit like a punch. But her glare lingered on Evelyn, a promise flickering in her blue eyes, a vow that this wasn't over. She turned, storming toward the galley, her ponytail swinging, her mind already spinning with ways to claw back power. She'd been humiliated, stripped bare in front of everyone, and that quiet old woman was to blame. Evelyn exhaled, slow and shaky, her hands unclenching from the armrests. She met Camille's gaze, a silent thank you passing between them, a bond forged in years of unspoken battles. The plane steadied, the engines a steady roar as it angled toward Denver, and for a moment Evelyn felt a rush of victory, small but real. She'd stood up, her daughter had stepped in, and Vanessa was gone, or so it seemed. The cabin buzzed, passengers whispering, some nodding at her with newfound respect, others glaring with thinly veiled contempt. She pulled her damp coat tighter, her heart still pounding, but a spark of pride flickered inside her. She'd won this round, hadn't she? Camille slid into the empty seat beside her, her hand brushing Evelyn's shoulder, a rare softness in her fierce demeanor. "You okay, Mom?" she asked, her voice low, steady. Evelyn nodded, her lips curving into a faint smile. I am now. But the air felt heavy, Vanessa's glare still burning in her memory, a shadow that wouldn't fade. The plane descended, the lights of Denver glinting faintly through the window, and Evelyn let herself believe the worst was over. She'd faced down the beast and come out standing, with Camille at her side. But deep down, a whisper of doubt lingered, a sense that the fight had only just begun, and Vanessa's silence was louder than her words. The plane touched down in Denver with a soft jolt, the cabin lights flickering back to full brightness as the engines whined to a stop. Evelyn Harris sat in 2B, her damp coat clinging to her thighs, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The thin blanket Vanessa had yanked away lay crumpled on the floor, a silent testament to the fight she'd just won. Her daughter, Camille Jackson, stood beside her, a towering figure in her hoodie and slacks, her sharp eyes scanning the cabin as passengers murmured, some still buzzing from her bombshell reveal. Vanessa Pierce was off the flight, escorted out by security moments ago, her heels clicking defiantly down the jet bridge. Evelyn exhaled, her shoulders easing, a flicker of triumph warming her chest. She'd stood up, Camille had struck, and the beast was caged, or so she thought. The air felt lighter, the sting of humiliation dulled by her daughter's fierce protection. Outside, Vanessa stormed into the terminal, her uniform wrinkled, her ponytail fraying at the ends. Her face burned red, her sharp blue eyes darting as she clutched her phone, her breath coming in short, angry bursts. She'd been humiliated, stripped of her post in front of everyone, all because of that quiet old woman in 2B and her high and mighty daughter. 12 years of flawless service, gone in a heartbeat. And for what? A blanket? She wouldn't let it end like this. She dialed a number, her thumb trembling as she paced near a gate agent's desk, her voice low but venomous when the line picked up. Uncle Roger, it's me. Some black woman and her daughter harassed me on the flight, got me pulled off. I need protection. Roger Pierce, her uncle and a big shot at the FAA, grunted on the other end, his tone gruff. What did you do? Vanessa smirked, spinning her tail. Nothing. She overreacted, caused a scene. Her kid, some CEO, thinks she runs the world. I need you to back me up. Roger didn't hesitate. 55, with a barrel chest and a network of cronies stretching from DC to LA, he'd spent decades bending rules for family. I'll handle it, he said, his voice a low rumble. Give me an hour. Vanessa hung up, her lips curling, a spark of vicious glee flickering in her chest. She'd lost the battle, but the war was hers to win. She leaned against a pillar, watching the plane through the terminal window, her mind racing with the payback she'd unleash. Evelyn and Camille thought they'd buried her, but she'd bury them deeper, and Roger's clout was her shovel. Back on the plane, the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. Folks, we've got a delay. Safety checks ordered from above. Sit tight. Groans rippled through the cabin, passengers shifting in their seats, the couple in 3A muttering about missed connections. Evelyn frowned, glancing at Camille, who stood rigid, her phone buzzing in her hand. What's going on? Evelyn asked, her voice soft, wary. Camille's jaw tightened as she read the screen, a message from her ops team. FAA grounded us. No reason given. Her eyes narrowed, her mind clicking into gear. This wasn't random, it stank of retaliation. But from who? She typed back, dig into it, fast, and pocketed the phone, her gaze sweeping the cabin. Something was wrong, and it was aimed at them. The jet bridge retracted, leaving the plane stranded on the tarmac, its engines silent, the Denver skyline glinting faintly under a gray dusk. Passengers grew restless, but the real storm hit when a gate agent boarded, a wiry man with a pinched face and a badge clipped to his chest. He marched to 2B, his voice loud, accusing. Evelyn Harris? You caused a disturbance up here. We've got a report says you're a problem. Step off or I'm calling the cops. Evelyn blinked, her heart lurching, her hands gripping the armrests. I didn't do anything, she said, her tone steady but strained. The coffee stain, on her coat a glaring mark. The agent sneered, leaning closer. Tell it to security. You're holding us up. Camille stepped forward, her 5'7" frame a wall between the agent and her mother, her voice cutting like steel. "She's not going anywhere. I'm Camille Jackson, CEO of Horizon Airways. Back off." The agent faltered, his eyes flickering, but he doubled down, his sneer widening. "Doesn't matter who you are. FAA says she's a risk. I've got orders." Passengers craned their necks, Tom smirking from across the aisle, his phone already, recording while the woman in 2C whispered, "Trouble," to her scarf-draped neighbor. Camille's fists clenched, her mind racing. Orders. From who? She pulled out her phone, dialing her legal team, her voice low. "FAA's targeting us. Find out why now." The agent crossed his arms, his stance rigid, but Evelyn felt the weight crash back onto her shoulders, heavier than before. She'd won, hadn't she? Vanessa was gone. Camille had power, yet here she was, accused, cornered, the target of something bigger. Her arthritis flared, her fingers stiffening, but she kept her chin up, her eyes locked on the agent. "I asked for a blanket," she said, her words slow, deliberate. "That's all." The agent snorted. "Sure, lady," and signaled for backup. Two uniformed guards stepping onto the plane, their hands on their belts. Camille's glare burned, her voice rising. "You're making a mistake. This is my airline, my rules." But the guards didn't budge, their faces blank, their orders ironclad. The cabin buzzed, passengers whispering, some nodding at Evelyn, others glaring, the divide sharpening. Tom muttered, "Should have stayed quiet," his voice a needle, in the chaos. Evelyn's heart sank, her brief victory dissolving into a trap she couldn't see. She'd thought Vanessa's exit was the end, but this, the grounding, the accusations, it was a counterpunch she hadn't braced for. Camille's phone buzzed again, her ops team texting. "FAA override link to Roger Pierce, high level, he's pulling strings." Camille's eyes widened, her breath catching. Roger Pierce? Vanessa's uncle? The pieces clicked, and her fury roared anew. Outside, Vanessa watched from the terminal, her smirk growing as the plane sat stranded, a pawn in her uncle's game. She'd lost her job, but she'd gained a weapon, and Roger's influence was a sledgehammer. She texted him, "Keep them grounded. Make it hurt." Her fingers trembling with glee. Evelyn and Camille thought they'd won, thought their little stunt had buried her. But she'd turned the tables, flipped the board, and now they were the ones stuck. The agent's voice echoed through the cabin. "Last chance, Harris." And Evelyn's hand shook, her resolve wavering. She'd escaped Vanessa's claws, only to land in a bigger net, one woven with power she couldn't fight. Camille knelt beside her, her hand on Evelyn's shoulder, her voice a fierce whisper. "We'll fix this, Mom. They don't know who they're messing with." Evelyn nodded, her lips trembling, but the doubt gnawed deeper. The plane wasn't moving. The guards loomed closer, and the victory she'd tasted turned bitter in her throat. She'd stood up, sure, but now she was stranded, accused, and the storm was just beginning. Vanessa's revenge wasn't a shout, it was a silent blade, and it cut deeper than anything she'd faced yet. Hey folks, let's unpack this twist. Did Vanessa's sneaky call to her uncle shock you as much as it did Evelyn? Comment number 1 if you think she's playing dirty and deserves what's coming. What about that gate agent? Would you have stood up to him like Camille? Drop a number 1 if you'd back her fight against this power grab. If you're raging at how fast Evelyn's win flipped to a trap, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and join us for the next blow. Roger's in the game now, but how far will his strings pull before they snap? Let's find out together. The plane sat stranded on the Denver tarmac, its engines silent. The cabin a pressure cooker of restless murmurs and shifting bodies. Evelyn Harris remained in 2B, her wool coat still damp with coffee, her hands gripping the armrests as the gate, agent's threat, "Step off or I'm calling the cops," lingered in the air. Camille Jackson stood beside her, a fierce sentinel in her hoodie and slacks, her phone pressed to her ear as she barked orders to her legal team. The 2 guards loomed at the aisle's edge, their hands twitching near their belts while passengers whispered, some with sympathy, others with scorn. Evelyn's heart thudded, her arthritis a dull ache, her brief triumph over Vanessa Pierce dissolving into this nightmare of accusations and delays. She'd thought the worst was behind her, but the weight of the agent's glare told her she'd Been wrong. Outside, Vanessa paced the terminal, her uniform swapped for a gray jacket, her sharp blue eyes glinting with malice. She'd been yanked off the flight, humiliated by Camille's power play, but her Uncle Roger's influence had turned the tables. She opened X on her phone, her fingers flying as she posted, "Entitled woman delays flight over a blanket. Crew harassed, passengers stranded. Justice for Vanessa." She hit send, her smirk widening as likes and retweets poured in, the lie spreading like wildfire. She'd lost her job, sure, but she'd weaponized the narrative, and the stranded passengers were her fuel. She watched the plane through the glass, her pulse racing with vicious glee. Evelyn and Camille wouldn't walk away clean. Not if she could help it. Back on the plane, the guard stepped closer, the agent nodding at them. "Time's up, Harris," he said, his voice a snarl. Camille's head snapped up, her call cutting off mid-sentence. "She's not moving," she said, her tone steel, her 5'7" frame blocking their path. "You've got no grounds." The agent sneered. "FAA says different." But before he could grab Evelyn, the jet bridge reattached with a thud, and passengers spilled out, freed from the grounded flight. The agent barked, "Gate B12 now," and the guards hustled Evelyn and Camille off, their grip tight on Evelyn's arms, her tote banging against her hip as she stumbled forward. At Gate B12, chaos erupted. Stranded passengers, fueled by Vanessa's ex-post, swarmed the area, their faces twisted with anger. A burly white man in a flannel shirt shoved through the crowd, his eyes locking on Evelyn as the guards released her. "You're the one holding us up," he roared, his meaty hand slamming into her shoulder. Evelyn staggered, her 62-year-old, frame buckling, her tote dropping to the floor. Camille lunged, shoving him back, her voice a thunderclap. "Get off her!" But the mob surged, a woman in a red coat spitting, "Go back to coach where you belong!" As others jeered, there, phones flashing, recording the pile-on. Evelyn's heart raced, her breath shallow, the physical blow a shock she hadn't braced for. The man swung again, his fist grazing Evelyn's arm, and she fell to one knee, her coat tearing at the seam. Camille grabbed her, pulling her up, her eyes blazing as she shielded her mother. "You're all cowards," she shouted, but the crowd didn't care, their rage a tidal wave fed by Vanessa's lie. Security arrived, but their faces were hard, their movements slow, swayed by Roger's whispered orders over the radio. "She's unruly," the agent said, pointing at Evelyn, and the guards grabbed her again, their cuffs snapping around her, wrists with a cold click. Evelyn gasped, the metal biting into her skin, her arthritis screaming as they yanked her toward a holding area. "I didn't do anything," she said, her voice steady but shaking, her dignity fraying under the weight of the mob's hate. Camille's phone was out, her hands trembling as she hit record, live streaming the chaos to Horizon's official account. "This is my mother, Evelyn Harris," she said, her voice cutting through the noise, the camera catching the cuffs, the jeering faces, the guards' cold indifference. "Attacked and arrested because she asked for a blanket. This is racism, plain and simple." She posted it, her breath ragged, and the video exploded online, racking up thousands of views in minutes. Hashtags flared. "Justice for Evelyn" trending. As strangers raged at the injustice, their comments a flood of support. Vanessa's smirk faltered as she scrolled from the terminal, her ex-post backfiring, the mob's venom now a spotlight on her own cruelty. The holding area was a stark box, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a metal bench bolted to the floor. Evelyn sat, her cuffed hands in her lap, her coat stained and torn, her gray bun unraveling. The guards stood by the door, their radios crackling with Roger's voice. "Keep her there." Camille paced outside, her legal team on speaker, their voices a flurry of strategy. "Public pressure's mounting," one said. "We've got the FAA on notice." Within an hour, the video's outcry forced the guards to uncuff Evelyn, their faces sour as they muttered, "You're free." She stood, her legs shaky, her hands rubbing her wrists, a flicker of hope igniting. The mob had dispersed, shamed by the livestream's reach, and Camille hugged her tight, whispering, "We beat them, Mom." Evelyn nodded, her lips curving faintly, the weight lifting just enough to breathe. She'd been attacked, cuffed, humiliated, but the world had seen, and it cared. She walked out with Camille, her tote slung over her shoulder, the terminal quieter now, passengers avoiding her gaze. She thought the tide had turned, that Vanessa's venom had been drained, her uncle's grip loosened. The adrenaline faded, her heart steadying, and she let herself believe it was over, that justice had clawed its way through the chaos. But then Camille's phone buzzed, a text from her ops team. FAA issued a no-fly ban on Evelyn Harris, Roger Pierce's signature, effective immediately. Camille's face darkened, her grip tightening on the phone, her voice a hiss. He's not done. Evelyn's breath caught, her hopes shattering like glass. A no-fly ban? After the mob, the cuffs, the live stream's win, this was the counterpunch, a sledgehammer swinging from the shadows. She'd escaped the holding. Cell thought she'd reclaimed her ground, but Roger's power stretched further, his claws deeper than she'd imagined. Vanessa watched from a coffee kiosk, her smirk back, her phone lighting up with Roger's reply. She's grounded for good. The terminal stretched out long and cold, passengers moving past, oblivious to the war Evelyn was losing. She'd fought back, won the crowd, but the system turned on her. Its racism a silent giant she couldn't outrun. Camille's eyes burned, her mind racing as she pulled Evelyn toward a quiet corner. "We'll fight this," she said, her voice fierce, unwavering. "He doesn't get to win." Evelyn nodded, her hands trembling, but the doubt clawed deeper. The mob had been a public sting, the cuffs a personal blow, but this ban, it was a cage, locking her out of the sky, branding her a threat. She'd thought Vanessa's exit was the end, the live stream her shield, but Roger's move was a checkmate she hadn't seen coming. The airport hummed around them, a world moving on while hers shrank, and the storm she'd weathered roared back, bigger, darker, and far from finishu. The Denver airport terminal buzzed with late-night travelers, their footsteps echoing off the high ceilings as Evelyn Harris stood in a quiet corner, her torn coat hanging loose, her gray bun fraying at the edges. Her wrists still ached from the cuffs, the no-fly ban from Roger Pierce, a fresh wound cutting deeper than the mob's blows. At 62, she'd faced racism before, but this, a systemic lockout branded by the FAA, felt like a guillotine on her freedom. Camille Jackson paced beside her, her hoodie swapped for a navy blazer from her carry-on, her sharp brown eyes blazing with fury. The live stream had turned the tide, freed Evelyn from the holding cell, but Roger's ban was a gut punch, a power play she couldn't let stand. She pulled out her tablet, her voice a low growl. "They don't get to do this, Mom. Not to you." Camille tapped into a satellite link, her fingers flying as she called an emergency board meeting for Horizon Airways. The screen flickered, 10 faces popping up, suits and ties in boardrooms from Seattle to Atlanta, their expressions tense. "Vanessa Pierce assaulted my mother on flight HX472, she said, her tone steel, her words clipped. "She's fired, effective now. No severance, no appeal." A murmur rippled through the group. The chairman, a gray-haired man named Ellis, leaning forward. "Evidence?" Camille held up her phone, the live stream replaying Vanessa's blanket yank, the coffee, spill, the gate agent's threats. "This is our airline, she's out." The vote was unanimous, a swift eye from every corner, and Vanessa's name vanished from the roster in real time, her badge deactivated before the call ended. But Camille wasn't done. She swiped to a new app, her legal team's chat, lighting up. "Sue Roger Pierce," she typed, her jaw tight. "Abuse of power, racial discrimination, FAA overreach. Hit him hard." Her general counsel, a wiry woman named Tara, replied instantly. "Filing now. Federal court. Expedited." Camille's lips curled, a fierce glint in her eyes as she pocketed the tablet. She turned to Evelyn, her hand on her mother's shoulder. "He's not untouchable, Mom. We'll bury him." Evelyn nodded, her breath steadying, a flicker of hope reigniting. The ban still stung, but Camille's strike felt like a lifeline, a crack in the wall Roger had built around her. Within hours, the airline roared back to life. The FAA, under pressure from Horizon's legal barrage and the viral live stream, lifted the grounding order, flights resuming with a new crew. Evelyn's no-fly ban dissolved under the spotlight, Roger's signature scrubbed from the system as Tara's lawsuit hit his desk. Camille booked them on the next plane to Seattle, a red-eye HX-489, and Evelyn boarded beside her, her tote slung over her shoulder, her torn coat a badge of survival. The cabin hummed with fresh faces, a young flight attendant named Mia offering her a thick blanket with a warm smile. "Anything else, ma'am?" she asked, her voice soft, genuine. Evelyn took it, her hands trembling slightly, and nodded. "This is plenty." The plane lifted off, the Denver lights fading below, and Camille squeezed her hand, her voice low. "We did it, Mom." Evelyn hugged her, her cheek against her daughter's, tears pricking her eyes as the cabin settled into a quiet buzz. Online, cheers erupted. Justice for Evelyn trending higher, strangers posting, "She won," and "Take that, FAA." The couple from 3A was gone, Tom's smirk nowhere in sight, replaced by passengers who nodded at Evelyn with respect, some whispering apologies for staying silent. She felt invincible, the weight of the mob, the cuffs, the ban lifting like fog, under a rising sun. She'd fought, Camille had struck, and the world had answered. But in a dim Denver motel room, Vanessa Pierce sat hunched over her laptop, her gray jacket crumpled on the floor, her sharp blue eyes bloodshot with rage. Fired. No badge, no job, no future in the sky, all because of Evelyn and her CEO brat. She scrolled X, her viral post drowned by Camille's livestream, her name now mud in aviation circles. She slammed the laptop shut, her breath ragged, her mind a storm of vengeance. She wouldn't let it end here. She opened a burner phone, her fingers trembling as she texted a contact from her darker days. "Need a favor. Big. Doctored footage. Fast." The reply buzzed back. "Send details. $2,000. Vanessa typed furiously, her smirk returning, as she outlined her plan. Splice old security clips, fake an assault, pin it on Evelyn. She sent it, then logged into a far-right news site, Patriot Pulse, her alias Sky Truth uploading the doctored file with a headline, "Violent Thug Delays Flight, Attacks Crew." The video hit the web, grainy but convincing, showing Evelyn, swinging at a blurred figure in a Horizon uniform, a scream dubbed over the silence. It exploded, racking up views, comments raging, "She's a menace, and lock her up." Vanessa leaned back, her chest heaving, her victory bitter but real. They'd taken her job, but she'd take their lives apart. The red-eye landed in Seattle at 3 a.m., the cabin quiet as Evelyn and Camille stepped off, the blanket draped over Evelyn's shoulders like a shield. They reached the gate, the air crisp, the terminal near empty, and Evelyn smiled, her first, real smile in hours. She'd won, hadn't she? The ban was gone, Vanessa was out, Roger was sued, the world on her side. But the peace shattered as protesters swarmed the exit. A dozen figures in hoodies and trucker hats, their signs scrawled with "Deport her" and "Thug out." They screamed slurs, "Go back where you came from." Their voices a wall of hate, their fists pounding the air. Evelyn froze, her tote slipping, her heart slamming against her ribs. Camille pulled her back, her eyes wide as she scanned the mob, her phone buzzing with alerts. Patriot Pulse video, Evelyn Harris assaulting. Crew viral. She opened it, her breath catching as the fake footage played. Evelyn's face clear, the lie blatant but believed. "It's doctored," she hissed, her voice shaking, but the protesters didn't care, their rage a tidal wave fed by Vanessa's venom. Security rushed in, pushing them back, but the damage was done, the slurs echoing in Evelyn's ears, her triumph torched in an instant. She'd landed free, thought the war was won, but Vanessa's counterstrike hit harder, a national hate storm branding her a monster. Evelyn's knees buckled, Camille catching her, her voice a fierce whisper. "We'll fix this, Mom, I swear." But the terminal stretched cold and endless, the protesters' screams a haunting chorus, and Evelyn's hope flickered, her victory a mirage. The mob in Denver had been personal, the ban systemic, but this, a fabricated lie tearing her apart. On screens nationwide, it was a beast she couldn't fight with dignity alone. Vanessa watched from her motel, her smirk a blade, her burner phone buzzing with Patriot Pulse's reply. Stories live, more coming. She'd lost everything, but she'd made Evelyn lose more, and the war was far from over. The Seattle night pressed heavy against the hotel windows, a faint drizzle streaking the glass as Evelyn Harris sat on the edge of a stiff bed, her torn coat draped over a chair, her gray hair loose and wild from the chaos at the airport. The protesters' slurs, "Go back where you came from," still rang in her ears, their signs flashing in her mind, fueled by Vanessa Pierce's doctored video branding her a violent thug. At 62, she'd faced hate before, but this, a national lie tearing her apart, was a weight she couldn't carry. Her tote sat unzipped on the floor, her arthritis flaring as she rubbed her wrists, the ghost of cuffs lingering from Denver. Camille Jackson paced the room, her navy blazer wrinkled, her sharp eyes darting between her phone and her mother, her fury a live wire barely contained. The hotel phone rang, shrill and sudden, and Evelyn flinched, her breath catching. Camille snatched it, her voice a snap. "What?" A security guard's voice crackled through. "Ma'am, we've got a problem. Someone smashed your windows. Downstairs. Red paint. Says go home." Camille's jaw tightened, her free hand curling into a fist. "Get it handled. Now." She slammed the receiver down, turning to Evelyn, her tone softening, but urgent. "Mom, we're moving you. This isn't safe." Evelyn's eyes welled, her voice breaking as she stood, her legs shaky. "I can't do this, Camille. I can't keep running." She grabbed her phone, dialing her oldest friend, Lila, a nurse she'd worked with for decades, her words a sob. "Lila, it's me. They're everywhere. I don't know what to do." Camille's phone buzzed, her security team texting. Protesters tracked her here. Mob growing. She knelt beside Evelyn, her hand on her mother's knee, her voice fierce. "We're not running, Mom. We're fighting." But Evelyn's tears fell, her resolve crumbling under the weight of the hate storm Vanessa had unleashed. The video had spread beyond Patriot Pulse, picked up by cable news, pundits screaming, "She's a danger," while strangers online called for her arrest, her deportation, her death. She'd thought the livestream was her shield, the bans lift her win, but this was a tidal wave, and she was drowning. Outside, tires screeched, a black pickup roaring into the hotel lot, its headlights cutting through the drizzle. 4 figures in camo jackets piled out, their faces masked, their boots thudding on the pavement. Vanessa had called in a favor, her burner phone linking her to a racist militia she'd met through far-right forums. "Make her pay," she'd texted, her smirk a venomous curl as she watched from her Denver motel, the Patriot Pulse video still racking up views. The militia leader, a hulking man named Jace, cocked a shotgun, his voice a growl. "Harris is in there. Let's scare her good." They circled Evelyn's rental car, a modest sedan Camille had secured, and fired warning shots, the blasts shattering. The quiet night, glass exploding as bullets punched through the windshield. Evelyn screamed, dropping the phone, Lila's voice cutting off mid-sentence. Camille yanked her down, shielding her as glass sprayed the lot below, the hotel shaking with the echo. "Stay low," Camille shouted, her heart pounding, her mind racing. Security burst in, 2 burly guards with radios crackling, their faces grim. "We've got shooters outside, police en route." Evelyn's sobs racked her body, her hands over her ears, the blanket from the flight slipping to the floor. She'd escaped the mob, the ban, the protesters, thought she'd found safety. But this, bullets flying, was a terror she couldn't outrun. Camille's arms tightened around her, her voice a fierce whisper. "I've got you, Mom. They won't win." The militia vanished into the night, tires squealing as sirens wailed in the distance, their warning shots a message etched in shattered glass. Evelyn sat trembling, her mind a blur, her victory in Seattle a distant memory. She'd thought the hotel was a refuge, thought Camille's power could shield her, but Vanessa's reach was a hydra, each head more vicious than the last. The police arrived, their flashlights sweeping the lot, but the damage was done, the car a wreck, the hotel lobby smeared with red paint. Camille's security team doubled down, moving them to a safe house, a nondescript condo 10 miles away, its windows barred, its doors steel. Evelyn sank into a couch, her hands shaking as she clutched a mug of tea Camille pressed into her palms. "I thought we'd won," she whispered, her voice hollow, her eyes distant. Camille knelt, her gaze fierce. "We're not done, Mom. I'm hiring more guards, tracking these bastards." But the reprieve was short-lived. Her phone buzzed, a text from her ops team. "Militia hit Lila's house. She's gone. Note says, surrender Evelyn, or she's next." Camille's breath stopped, her eyes widening as she showed it to Evelyn, whose mug crashed to the floor, tea pooling like blood. Lila, her rock, her sister in all but name, kidnapped because of her. Evelyn's scream tore through the condo, her body collapsing, her hands clawing at her hair. "This is my fault," she cried, her voice raw, her guilt a knife twisting deeper. Then the militia's shots. Camille grabbed her shoulders, her voice shaking but firm. "No, it's Vanessa's. We'll get Lila back." She dialed her team, her words a torrent. "Find them. Every resource, every contact. Now." Her empire flexed, satellites pinging, drones launching, her security tracing the militia's trail, but Evelyn's world shrank to a pinpoint of despair. She'd escaped bullets, thought she'd survived, but Lila's life hung in the balance, a ransom she couldn't pay with pride alone. In Denver, Vanessa scrolled Patriot Pulse. Her smirk a jagged edge as comments raged, "Kill the thug!" She'd lost her career, but she'd turned Evelyn into a national pariah, and now Lila was her trump card. She texted Jace, "Hold her tight. More to come." Her glee a dark fire. Evelyn's win, Camille's strike. They were ash now, and Vanessa's war was a blaze she'd stoke until they burned. Evelyn sat frozen, her tears dry, her guilt a noose, the safe house a cage. She'd fought back, thought she'd stood tall, but Vanessa's revenge was a beast with teeth and it wasn't done biting. Hey folks, let's break this down. Did Vanessa's militia move make your stomach drop like it did Evelyn's? Comment. Number 1. If you think she's crossed a line no one comes back from. What about Evelyn? Would you crack under that guilt or fight like Camille? Drop a number 1 if you'd stand with her against this nightmare. If you're reeling from Lila's kidnapping, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and join us for the next twist. We're in deep now, but can Camille's empire outmuscle Vanessa's hate? Let's see where this storm takes us. The safe house sat cloaked in Seattle's pre-dawn gloom, its barred windows casting faint shadows across the living room where Evelyn Harris slumped on a couch, her torn coat discarded, her gray hair a tangled mess. The mug shards from her dropped. Tea lay scattered on the floor, a jagged reminder of Lila's kidnapping. The militia's note, "Surrender Evelyn, or she's next," burning in her mind. At 62, she'd faced hate, bullets, and lies. But losing Lila, her nurse friend, of 30 years, was a wound too deep to stitch. Camille Jackson stood over her, her navy blazer swapped for a black turtleneck, her sharp eyes bloodshot but fierce. Her phone buzzed relentlessly, her security team tracking the militia, her empire stretched thin to save one life and shield another. Camille knelt, her hands on Evelyn's shoulders, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "We're getting Lila back, Mom. I'll pay whatever they want." Evelyn's eyes, red and hollow, met hers, her whisper broken. "They'll kill her anyway." Camille shook her head, her jaw tight. "Not if I move fast." She stood, dialing her CFO, her words clipped. "Liquidate 5 million. Cash, untraceable. Now." The line crackled, the CFO stammering, "That's a fortune, Camille." But she cut him off. "Do it." She texted the militia's burner number, her fingers shaking. 5 million for Lila. Name the spot." The reply buzzed back. "Pier, 17 midnight, no cops." Camille's lips pressed thin, her gamble set, her heart pounding with the stakes. The hours crawled, Evelyn silent, her hands clasped as Camille coordinated with her team. Drones sweeping Seattle's waterfront, guards prepping unmarked vans. Midnight hit, and they rolled out, Camille driving, Evelyn beside her, the cash in, duffels filling the back. Pier 17 loomed dark and deserted, the Puget Sound lapping at rusted pilings, the air thick with salt and dread. Jace, the militia leader, emerged from the shadows, his camo jacket stained, his shotgun slung low. Lila stumbled beside him, her wrists bound, her silver hair matted with blood, her nurse's resilience cracked but alive. Evelyn gasped, tears spilling, her voice a sob. "Lila!" Camille stepped out, her 5'7" frame taut, her voice steel. "Money's here. Let her go." Jace smirked, his eyes glinting as two lackeys hauled the duffels, unzipping them to reveal stacks of hundreds. He shoved Lila forward, her knees buckling, and Camille caught her, pulling her to the van. Evelyn lunged from the passenger seat, hugging Lila tight, her sobs racking her body as Lila whispered, "I'm okay, Evie." The militia vanished into the night, tires screeching, the cash theirs, and Evelyn's heart swelled. Her friend safe, the nightmare lifting. She'd thought Lila was lost, but Camille's gamble had won, a fleeting dawn breaking through the storm. They sped back to the safe house, Lila bandaged by a medic Camille had on standby, her cuts shallow, her spirit bruised but unbroken. Evelyn clung to her tears drying, a fragile hope blooming. "We did it," she said, her voice soft, her hands trembling as she brushed Lila's hair. Camille nodded, her breath steadying, her eyes scanning the room. "You're both safe now." The condo felt warmer, the barred windows a shield, and Evelyn let herself believe it. The militia gone, Vanessa's grip slipping. She'd escaped. Bullets, reclaimed Lila, thought the war was turning, her daughter's empire a fortress around her. But in Denver, Vanessa Pierce sat in her motel room, her laptop glowing, her sharp blue eyes wild with rage. The Patriot Pulse video had branded Evelyn a thug. The protesters had swarmed, the militia had struck. But Camille's strike, firing her and suing Roger, had lit a fuse she couldn't douse. She'd lost everything, and now Lila was free. Her ransom plan ashes. She wouldn't stop. She cracked her knuckles, logging into a dark web forum, her alias, Sky Viper, pinging a hacker she'd paid before. "Crash Horizon Airways." She typed, her smirk ablaze. "Frame Evelyn Harris as a terrorist, 10 grand. The reply flashed. "Done. Give me 2 hours." The hacker moved fast, breaching Horizon's servers, planting malware that spiraled through flight systems nationwide. At 4 a.m., screens blinked out in control towers from Miami to Portland. Planes grounded, schedules erased. A digital chaos labeled terrorist cyber attack. Vanessa uploaded a fake manifest to Patriot Pulse, Evelyn's name forged as the mastermind, her photo splashed beside domestic threat. The story exploded, news anchors gasping. Evelyn Harris, linked to militia, cripples air travel. Airports locked down, passengers stranded, and the nation turned on her again, the thug narrative now a terrorist's crown. Evelyn woke to sirens, the safe house shaking as FBI agents stormed in, their vests black, their guns drawn. "Evelyn Harris," one shouted, his voice a battering ram. "You're under arrest for cyber terrorism." She stumbled from the couch, her blanket falling, her hands up as agents cuffed her, the metal cold and tight, her arthritis screaming. Lila cried out. She didn't do anything. But Camille lunged, her voice a roar. "This is a setup. Check the servers." The lead agent, a square-jawed man named Holt, sneered. "We've got proof. She's done." They dragged Evelyn out, her tote left behind, her world collapsing as news vans swarmed the street, cameras flashing, headlines screaming her name. Camille's team scrambled, their techs tracing the hack, their screens lighting up with Vanessa's digital fingerprints. "It's her," a coder said, his voice shaking. "Pierce planted it." Camille called Tara, her lawyer, her words a torrent. "Prove it. Get her out now." By noon, the evidence hit the FBI, the malware linked to Vanessa's motel IP, the frame-up exposed. Holt uncuffed Evelyn outside the precinct, his face sour, muttering, "Mistake." As she rubbed her wrists, her legs weak, she hugged Camille, her tears fresh, the nightmare lifting again. "We beat it," she whispered, her hope flickering back, the terrorist label shredded, Vanessa's gambit foiled. But Roger Pierce watched from his FAA office, his barrel chest heaving, his phone buzzing with Camille's lawsuit and Vanessa's failure. He slammed his fist on the desk, his voice a growl as he dialed a contact. Declare martial law at all Horizon airports. Detain Evelyn Harris. Black site. No questions. The order rolled out. Airports militarized. Soldiers in riot gear swarming terminals. Evelyn and Camille reached SeaTac, their relief shattering as troops grabbed her, their gloved hands yanking her into a van, its doors slamming shut. Camille screamed, "No!" But the soldiers pushed her back, their rifles raised, Roger's power a sledgehammer crushing their win. Evelyn sat in the van, her hands cuffed again, her breath shallow, the safe house a memory, Lila's rescue a mirage. She'd thought the hack was the end, thought Camille's proof had saved her, but Roger's retaliation was a cage, a black site cell waiting to swallow her. Vanessa smirked from her motel, her burner buzzing with Jace's reply. "Good work, she's gone." The war had escalated, and Evelyn's fleeting triumph was dust, her daughter's empire battered, the storm raging darker than ever. The black van rumbled through Seattle's dawn streets, its tinted windows hiding Evelyn Harris from the world, as soldiers in riot gear flanked her, their rifles slung low, their faces blank behind visors. At 62, she sat cuffed on a metal bench, her torn coat replaced by a thin jail smock, her gray hair matted against her sweat-streaked face. Roger Pierce's martial law order had snatched her from SeaTac, her wrists raw from the cuffs, her arthritis a relentless throb as the van sped toward a black site prison, a shadow facility off the grid. She'd thought the hack's exposure was her salvation, Lila's rescue her lifeline. But this, a secret cell ordered by the FAA's top dog, was a grave she couldn't climb out of. Her breath came shallow, her hope a flicker smothered by the soldiers' silence. Outside the SeaTac terminal, Camille Jackson fought through the chaos, her black turtleneck soaked with drizzle, her sharp eyes wild as she shoved past troops blocking her path. "That's my mother!" she shouted, her voice cracking, her 5'7" frame dwarfed by the wall of Kevlar and steel. The soldiers didn't budge, their commander barking, "Stand back, ma'am!" his rifle raised. Camille's phone buzzed, her legal team texting. Black site confirmed, no jurisdiction, we're outgunned. Her chest heaved, her mind racing. Roger's power was a fortress, but she'd built Horizon Airways from nothing, and she wouldn't let him bury her mom. She dialed Tara, her voice a hiss. "Get me in, whatever it takes." In Denver, Vanessa Pierce leaned against her motel bed, her laptop open, her sharp blue eyes glinting with triumph. The hack had failed, Lila was free, but Roger's martial law was her ace and she'd played it hard. Fired, disgraced, she'd clawed her way back, her Patriot Pulse lies turning her into a far-right hero. She scrolled X, her alias Sky Truth, trending as followers cheered. Lock Harris up! She'd lost her career, but she'd won the mob, and now they'd gathered outside Evelyn's cell, a gift from her dark web whispers. She texted Jace, the militia leader. "Rally them. Make it loud." His reply buzzed. "Done. They want blood." Vanessa's smirk widened, her vengeance a symphony, and Evelyn was the finale. The van stopped at a razor-wired compound, its gates clanging shut as soldiers dragged Evelyn into a concrete box, a 10x10 cell with a single bulb flickering overhead. They uncuffed her, shoving her onto a cot, her knees buckling as the door slammed, the lock echoing like a gunshot. Outside, a mob swelled, 50 strong, their hoodies and trucker hats a uniform of hate, their chants a deafening roar. "Execute the thug! Execute the thug!" Signs stabbed the air. "Terrorist out!" And "No mercy!" Their voices fueled by Vanessa's lies, her video now a gospel. Evelyn curled on the cot, her hands over her ears, the screams piercing the walls, her breaking point to memory as terror took root. Camille's team moved fast, her empire flexing with a precision born of desperation. Tara infiltrated the compound security grid, a backdoor hack slipping past Roger's firewalls, while a legal squad stormed FAA headquarters with injunctions, their suits a swarm of wasps. Camille led the charge, her rented SUV crashing a checkpoint, her guards disarming 2 soldiers with tasers, their bodies crumpling as she sprinted inside. She reached the cell block, her breath ragged, her voice a shout. "Mom!" Evelyn staggered up, her eyes wide as Camille's team blew the lock, the door swinging open with a screech. She hugged her, tears streaming, her whisper fierce. "We're out!" They ran, Camille's guards firing warning shots, the mob scattering as tear gas bloomed, their chants choking into coughs. Tara's livestream hit Horizon's feed. Roger's corruption exposed. FAA abuses power. Detains innocent woman. The video soared, millions watching as soldiers retreated, their commander barking, "Fall back!" under public fury. Evelyn stumbled into the SUV, her legs weak, her heart pounding as Camille floored it, the compound shrinking in the rear view. The mob dispersed, Roger's name trending with "Fuhrer resign." Now, and Evelyn hugged Camille, her voice a sob. "You did it, baby." The dawn broke, a fragile gold over the city, and she felt invincible, the cell a memory, justice clawing back. But Vanessa watched from her motel, her smirk fading as the livestream burned her plan to ash. Roger's power was cracking, Evelyn was free, and her final play needed teeth. She grabbed her burner, texting her hacker. "One last job. Bomb on Jackson's jet. 20 grand. The reply buzzed. "Planted. Checks 999. Departs noon." Vanessa's chest heaved, her glee a dark fire. She'd lost the mob, the hack, the militia, but this, a mid-flight explosion with Evelyn aboard, was her endgame. She packed her bag, her mind racing. They'd think they'd won, board that jet and burn in the sky. Her revenge a fireball no one could dodge. Camille's team secured a private hangar, HX999 prepped for a noon flight to Atlanta, a safe haven away from Seattle's chaos. Evelyn boarded, her tote slung over her shoulder, a new coat from Camille draped around her, its wool soft against her bruised skin. She sank into a plush seat, Lila beside her, rescued and patched, their hands clasped tight. Camille checked the manifest, her voice steady. "We're clear. Home by night." The jet taxied, its engines a low roar, and Evelyn exhaled, her tears dry, her hope solidifying. The mob was gone, Roger's grip shattered, Vanessa's lies exposed. She'd survived the cell, thought the war was hers, her daughter's empire a shield unbreakable. The jet lifted off, the city fading below, and Evelyn smiled. Her first real smile since Atlanta. She'd fought back, endured, won this round, hadn't she? Lila squeezed her hand, her voice soft. "We're okay now." But the bomb ticked, silently beneath them, Vanessa's final play a shadow they couldn't see, its timer counting down from 30 minutes, a lethal gift wrapped in their triumph. Vanessa watched from a diner near Denver's airport, her coffee cooling, her smirk, a jagged edge. She'd lost everything, but she'd take them with her, and the sky would be her witness. The private jet, HX999, soared at 35,000 feet, its engines a steady hum as it cut through the midday sky toward Atlanta. Evelyn Harris sat in a plush leather seat, her new wool coat draped over her shoulders, her gray hair pulled into a loose bun, still tangled from the blacksite cell. At 62, she'd endured mobs, cuffs, and lies, but now with Lila beside her, their hands clasped, and Camille up front checking with the pilot, she felt a fragile peace. The bomb Vanessa Pierce had planted ticked silently beneath the floor, its timer at 28 minutes, a lethal secret woven into their escape. Evelyn's tote rested at her feet, her arthritis a dull ache, but her tears had dried. Her heart buoyed by the win over Roger's martial law, the mob's dispersal, the jet's smooth climb. She'd thought the war was waning. Her daughter's empire her shield. Lila shifted, her silver hair catching the light, her cuts bandaged from the militia's grip. "You're a fighter, Evie," she said, her voice soft, her nurse's grit shining through. Evelyn smiled, faint but real, squeezing her hand. "We both are." The cabin was quiet, 6 guards in black vests lining the walls, their eyes scanning, Camille's team ever watchful after Seattle's chaos. But something nagged at Evelyn, a prickle on her neck. A nurse's instinct honed from years of spotting trouble before it struck. She leaned down, adjusting her tote, and froze. A faint beep pulsed from beneath her seat, steady, mechanical, wrong. Her breath caught, her hands trembling as she slid to the floor, her fingers tracing the carpet's edge. She found a panel, loose and warm, and pried it open, her arthritis screaming as she worked. A black box stared back, wires coiled like snakes, a digital timer glowing red. 25 minutes. "Camille!" she shouted, her voice sharp, cutting through the cabin's calm. Camille spun, her 5'7" frame bolting back, her sharp eyes widening as she dropped beside her. "What is that?" Evelyn's hands shook, her words a rush. "A bomb. I've seen them in ER drills." Lila gasped, the guards snapping to attention, their radios crackling as they formed a circle. Camille's face paled, her mind racing, but Evelyn moved fast, her nurse's calm kicking in, a steel she'd forged stitching gunshot wounds under pressure. "Get me a knife," she said, her voice steady, her eyes locked on the wires. A guard tossed her a pocket knife, its blade glinting as she caught it, her hands steadying despite the pain. She'd disarmed a training bomb once, decades ago, a mock drill for mass casualties, and the memory surged back, her fingers tracing the red wire, then the blue. "Cut the wrong one. We're gone," she muttered, sweat beading on her brow. Camille knelt close, her voice a whisper. "You've got this, Mom." The timer hit 22 minutes, the beep a heartbeat in her ears. Evelyn's knife hovered, her mind a battlefield of doubt and focus. But she sliced the blue wire, her breath held, the beep silencing with a faint click. The timer froze at 21 minutes, the bomb dead, its threat snuffed out. The cabin exhaled, guards slumping, Lila sobbing. "Oh, Evie," as Camille hugged her tight, her voice breaking. "You saved us." Evelyn dropped the knife, her hands trembling, her heart slamming against her ribs. She'd done it, turned death into life, her skills a lifeline when all seemed lost. The jet steadied, the pilot radioing, all clear, and Evelyn sank back, her tears fresh, her victory raw and real. They landed in Atlanta at 2 p.m., the hangar swarming with Horizon security, their vests a wall as Evelyn stepped off, Lila and Camille beside her. News broke fast. Vanessa's motel raided, her burner phone seized, the hacker's confession, spilling her bomb plot. She was arrested, cuffed in Denver, her sharp blue eyes wild as she screamed, "Ungrateful trash!" at the cameras, her far-right fans scattering, her empire of lies crumbling. Roger faced indictment, his FAA desk stripped, his martial law exposed as a racist vendetta. Horizon stock soared, public trust surging as Camille's team leaked. The jet's survival. Evelyn, the hero trending nationwide. Evelyn stood at a press conference an hour later, her tote slung over her shoulder, her voice steady as she spoke to a sea of microphones. "I asked for a blanket," she said, her words slow, deliberate, "and they tried to take my life, but I'm still here." Cheers erupted, cameras flashing, strangers chanting her name, a tidal wave of support drowning Vanessa's hate. Camille beamed beside her, her hand on her mother's back, Lila nodding from the sidelines, their trio unbreakable. Evelyn felt invincible, the bomb disarmed, the villains caged, the world hers again. She thought the jet was the end, but she'd turned it into a triumph, her last stand a beacon. The crowd thinned, the trio retreating to a secure suite, exhaustion settling in as Evelyn sank into a chair, her coat folded beside her. She smiled, her first deep breath in days. The war won, hadn't it? Lila brewed tea, Camille checked security, feeds, and the room felt safe, a fortress after the storm. But outside, a shadow moved, a rooftop across the street glinting with a scope's faint reflection. A sniper, hired by Vanessa's loyalists, knelt in silence, his rifle steady, his orders scrawled on a note from her jail cell. "Finish her." The trigger pulled, a bullet whizzing past Evelyn's head, shattering the suite's window as glass sprayed the room. Evelyn dove, her scream sharp, Lila hitting the floor, Camille tackling her mother behind the couch, her voice a roar. "Get down!" Guards swarmed, their guns drawn. The snipers shot a near miss, its echo a thunderclap in the quiet victory. Evelyn's heart raced, her hands shaking, the tea mug rolling across the carpet, its steam curling in the air. She'd disarmed the bomb, thought Vanessa's arrest was the end. But this, a bullet grazing her hair, was a claw from the grave, Vanessa's hate striking one last time. Camille's guards fired back, the rooftop figure fleeing. But the peace was ash, the war's end a lie, and Evelyn's triumph hung by a thread. The Atlanta safe suite was a war zone of shattered glass, the sniper's bullet a jagged scar across the carpet where Evelyn Harris had ducked just in time. At 62, she lay sprawled behind the couch, her new wool coat tangled around her, her gray hair wild as her heart slammed against her ribs. Lila crouched beside her, her silver hair dusted with shards, her nurse's calm shattered by the near miss, while Camille Jackson barked orders, her black turtleneck streaked with sweat, her sharp eyes scanning the room. The guards returned. Fire, their shots cracking the air as the sniper fled the rooftop, his scope glinting one last time before vanishing into the city's haze. Evelyn's hands shook, her arthritis a fiery ache, the tea mug spilled warmth soaking her sleeve. She'd disarmed a bomb, thought Vanessa's arrest was the end, but this, a bullet from the shadows, was a scream that the war wasn't over. Camille's security swarmed, 2 guards tackling the rooftop's edge, their radios buzzing as they hauled the sniper down, his rifle clattering to the pavement. He was a wiry man, his face pocked with scars, his hoodie patched with militia insignias. "Who sent you?" Camille demanded, her 5'7" frame towering as he cuffed wrists twisted behind him. His sneer cracked, his voice a rasp. "Pierce, from jail. Paid me through a dead drop." Camille's jaw tightened, her phone out as she dialed her team, her words a torrent. "Trace it, every dime, every note, now." The guards dragged him off, his boots scraping, but Evelyn's breath stayed shallow. Her victory from the press conference, the jet's survival, all ash in the wake of Vanessa's final claw. The sniper's confession hit fast, his wallet yielding, a crumpled note. "Finish Harris, VP." Camille's text traced the payment, a $5,000 wire from a far-right loyalist tied to Vanessa's Patriot Pulse fans, funneled through a Denver proxy. But a face clicked in Evelyn's mind, a memory from the flight's first sting. Tom, the businessman in the gray suit, his smirk, his muttered, "Some people don't belong up here." She'd seen him at the press conference lingering at the edge, his phone flashing. "It's him," she said, her voice steady, her finger jabbing the air. "The guy from 3B, he's the sniper." Camille's eyes widened, her team pulling flight logs, security footage, matching his smug face to the rooftop's shadow. Tom, a mid-level exec with a grudge, bought by Vanessa's hate. Police swarmed Tom's hotel, 3 miles away, his room, a nest of rifles and Patriot Pulse printouts, his phone buzzing with Vanessa's last jail call. End it. He was cuffed mid-escape, his gray suit wrinkled, his sneer gone as he spat. She deserved it. At the cameras. Evelyn collapsed into a chair, her legs weak, her tote at her feet, the sniper's bullet a whisper from death. She'd survived. The mob, the bomb, thought she'd won, but Vanessa's reach stretched from a cell, her loyalists a hydra she couldn't outrun. Camille knelt, her hand on her mother's, her voice fierce. "It's over now, Mom. He's done." Evelyn nodded, her tears dry but the doubt lingered, a shadow she couldn't shake. The news broke. Tom's arrest a wildfire, Vanessa's jail plot the fuel, and Roger's indictment the capstone. Horizon's feed streamed it live. CEO's mother targeted, survives again, the public roaring. Gavilan unbreakable trending as strangers posted. She's a legend. Camille vowed to dismantle every racist cog in her empire, her voice steel at oppressor. "No one touches my family again." Evelyn watched, her breath steadying, her hope flickering back. The suite was secured, Lila brewing fresh tea, the guards a wall, and she let herself believe it. The war's end a fragile dawn after the storm. But Evelyn wasn't done. She'd fought from 2B's chill to a sniper's scope, her dignity her weapon, her silence her strength. She called Camille's CFO, her voice calm but iron. "I want Horizon, all of it." Camille blinked, her sharp eyes narrowing, but Evelyn pressed on. "You've got bigger dreams, baby, I'll take it." She'd saved the jet, turned hate into headlines, and now she'd claim the sky. Using her savings, her nurse's pension, and a loan from Lila, she bought Horizon in secret, a 51% stake sealed in a midnight deal, her name swapped for Camille's on the deed. At 63, she was CEO, a titan born from a blanket sting. The board convened, half-fired on her first day, their suits stunned as she strode in, her tote swapped for a briefcase, her wool coat crisp. "New rules," she said, her voice steady, her gray bun tight. "Respect, or you're out." She hired Lila as COO, her friend's silver hair gleaming as she took the reins, their decades of grit now power. Vanessa's family, her cousins, her uncle's cronies, got bans for life, their names erased from Horizon's skies, a final cut from the woman they'd tried to break. The airline soared, its stock doubling, its cabins warm with blankets for all Evelyn's mark, a quiet revolution. Camille stepped back, her empire hers to reforge elsewhere, her pride aglow as she hugged her mom. "You earned it," she said, her voice soft, her 5'7" frame a shadow to Evelyn's rise. The sniper, Tom, faced trial, his plea drowned by evidence. Vanessa's jail term tripled, her screams from a cell a fading echo. Evelyn stood at Horizon's helm, her office overlooking Atlanta's sprawl, her tote on a shelf, a relic of the fight. She'd asked for warmth, got a war, and won a throne, her silence rewriting the sky. The first flight under her reign took off, a Seattle run, its passengers nodding at her story, their blankets thick, their smiles real. Lila ran ops, her nurse's precision a backbone, and Evelyn watched from the tower, her arthritis eased by purpose, her tears a memory. She'd survived, not just the slight, but the mob, the bomb, the bullet, her last stand, a legacy no one could touch. Vanessa's hate had birthed a titan, and Evelyn's quiet strength, once dismissed, now ruled. A shocking reversal that turned a blanket into a crown. Evelyn Harris's journey in Flight Attendant refuses Black Mother extra blanket, not knowing that her daughter owns the airline, offers profound lessons in resilience, dignity, and the power of quiet strength. At 62, Evelyn faced relentless racial injustice, from Vanessa Pierce's initial slight to a mob's fury, a bomb's threat, and a sniper's bullet. Yet she never broke. Her story teaches us that courage isn't always loud. It's in the steady hands disarming. A bomb, the calm voice demanding respect, the will to rise after every fall. Racism, systemic and personal, tried to crush her, but she turned it into a ladder, climbing from victim to victor as Horizon Airways CEO. Camille's fierce protection shows that love and power can fight back, but Evelyn's triumph proves individual grit can rewrite the narrative. The tale warns of hate's persistence. Vanessa's venom didn't stop at firing, escalating to lethal revenge. Yet it affirms that truth and perseverance can outlast lies. Evelyn's takeover, a secret twist, underscores that those underestimated often hold the greatest strength, turning a blanket's denial into a legacy of justice. What's the takeaway? Stand up, even when the odds stack high. Dignity isn't given, it's claimed. So what moment hit you hardest? Evelyn's bomb-diffusing calm or her rise to power? Comment below, hit like if you're inspired, subscribe for more tales of grit, and share to spread her victory. Thanks for joining this wild ride. May you find your own strength to soar above any storm.